Hello everyone, Earl Henderson, Primordial Defense. Thank you for watching. I have another Monday quarterback video for you. I'm going to play this video and talk about things that are going on to better explain what's going on and talk about things that I think that are being done right and or done wrong. This video is not an officer involved shooting video. Instead, this is a news conference video where the sheriff of Volusia County does a news release on a fatal self-inflicted gunshot of a 3-year-old. So the sheriff is going to talk about how this 3-year-old child shot themselves, where the gun was at, where the parents were at, what they were doing, etc. So before I play the video, I'll just read from a Spectrum News 13 article real quick, and then I'll play the video. The 3-year-old boy who died after shooting himself with a gun Wednesday got into his parents' bedroom and found the 9mm gun from their nightstand drawer, Volusia County Sheriff Mike Chitwood said at a news conference Thursday. The child pulled the trigger and fired one round, Chitwood said. Also, I guess I should back this up and say that this story was updated on February 16th of 2023. The Volusia sheriff said the boy's parents had gone to the grocery store and left his 16-year-old sister at home to watch the child and his 7-year-old brother. The incident took place shortly after 6 p.m. near the 2400 block of Nectarine Road in Daytona Park Estates in DeLand. Chitwood said he did not know whether any charges would be filed. He indicated a state statute says no arrest shall be made before 7 days after the accidental shooting of a child. We will, as we do with every case, we will investigate it and we will submit it to the state attorney, Chitwood said. But I cannot imagine there is anything in the law books that can punish that family member more than what happened last night, Wednesday. The Department of Children and Families also is involved in the case. The father is a correctional officer, so specific details can't be released about the family, Chitwood said. The father told investigators that firearms are usually kept in a safe in the bedroom. He said the safe's electronic lock function has stopped working and the firearms were placed on top of the refrigerator in the kitchen and in the nightstand. He urged parents to lock up any guns they have in the home. I would like them to listen to that 911 call. I would like to have them hear the 16-year-old say, "My brother shot himself and he's not breathing." I think if you heard that, you would run out right now and buy a gun safe, he said. Chitwood said his biggest concern now is the mental and physical health of his deputies and first responders because the scene of the shooting was difficult. Those involved are in the process of setting up meetings with a psychologist, he said. And that's the end of that news article. So I'll play the video. I'll pause intermittently here and there to expound upon things that I'm thinking about. Here we go.
You got those copies, Andrew?
Yes, sir.
I will tell you I would rather be standing anywhere right now, but here with you folks is the last place I want to be standing. Last night at 6:22 p.m., we received a frantic call that a 3-year-old had shot themselves from a residence in the 2400 block of Nectarine. At approximately 6:29, our first deputy arrived on scene, Deputy Logan Daniels, who began to administer CPR to the 3-year-old. And it was obvious at that point in time that the 3-year-old had probably, it did expire. The 3-year-old was then transported by evac to Advent Health in DeLand, and our investigation was underway. There's some stuff that we can't tell you because the father of the 3-year-old is a state correctional officer. Therefore, there are things that I can't release about the family. I can tell you that the weapon that the 3-year-old got his hands on was stored in the nightstand next to the bed. It's a Canex 9mm firearm that was discharged once. The second firearm inside of the house was a Glock that was on top of the refrigerator. There is a safe in the bedroom. The safe is inoperable.
And of course, it wants to freeze and buffer. So I'll use this opportunity for some talking. The deputy that responded there started life-saving measures, and the anatomy of a 3-year-old is a lot different than that of an adult. So there's some medical gear that can be used on adults and also be used on little small children. But there's some stuff that cannot be used. So some of the things like that, number one is tourniquet, well, depending on the style of tourniquet. So a windlass style tourniquet, like a Cat 7 or a soft T tourniquet, will not very effectively work on a small child. Their limbs are just not thick enough or have that much of a diameter for that windlass style tourniquet to work effectively on. It'll bottom out, so to speak. Like, you can tighten that thing as much as you can as far as the strap goes and try to wrap it around and then start the windlass thing. You're just not going to be able to do much with a windlass tourniquet on a small child. That is where elastic style tourniquets flourish. And let me see if I can get this thing to come out of buffer mode. And of course, they don't want to come out of buffer mode.
The safe is inoperable.
So having your medical gear set up, you should also have stuff for pediatrics in the event that you do come across a small child that needs pre-hospital care. So a different style of tourniquet is one thing to think about. Yeah, Cat 7 tourniquets and soft T tourniquets are the cat's meow. Like, they do great, but they only do great on adults with larger limbs. So an elastic style tourniquet, like a RATS tourniquet or a TK4 tourniquet or a SWAT tourniquet, those are going to be more ideal. When it comes to airway management, nasopharyngeal airways. So there are a multitude of different sizes of nasopharyngeal airways and oropharyngeal airways. Most trauma kits, as far as like off the shelf, just a stock trauma kit that you buy, will come with an adult MPA and oropharyngeal airway. They won't come with multiple different sizes. So when you're setting up your kit, you need to include things in there for pediatrics. So my trauma kits, well, number one, I have a pediatric specific trauma kit made just for my boy. So when my boy was born, I made a blowout kit just for him, and all it has is pediatric stuff in it. There's some adult level stuff in there as far as like compressed gauze. Like, compressed gauze can be used for anybody, right? But it has the elastic style tourniquets in there. I've got the pediatric nasopharyngeal airways, the oropharyngeal airways, the pediatric CPR masks that will fit around the small child's face. I even have the infant-sized ones. So I had a pediatric kit set up from infancy, and it's going to be there until he turns into an adolescent. And then at which point I'll take all that pediatric-specific stuff out of that kit and have more adult-sized stuff in it. But my other trauma kits that I still have the means to be able to treat a child, because I have different sized oral pharyngeal airways and things like that in there. So when you're setting up your trauma gear, and I'll back this up even a little bit more. So when it comes to your medical gear, as a first responder, as a responsible armed citizen, whatever you are, whether you're a cop, you're a security guard, firefighter, EMT, just a regular armed citizen, you should have your personal first aid kit on you, and then you should have your supplemental trauma gear that's in your vehicle. So the stuff that's on you is going to be stuff that is ideally meant for just you, to be able to keep you in the fight longer, to win that fight. It's going to be hard to put different size stuff in your personal first aid stuff just to be able to accommodate someone else. So when it comes to the stuff that you carry on you, it is ideally meant for you in case you get fucked up. Now, when it comes to, the professions of law enforcement, security, fire, EMS, the people that you're going to be working with are adults. So the stuff that can be used on you can also be used on them. It's just an added benefit, right? Like their limbs are about the same size as yours, etc. So if you don't need to use that thing on you, you can use it on them. Now, if you have, as an armed citizen, that kit really is just going to apply to you and or your spouse. Could you try to add stuff in there for your small child? Yes, you could. But it's going to be taking up, depending on how you have everything set up, it could take up more room. You may not have enough room to be able to do that. And so when it comes to the personal first aid kit that you carry on your body, in my opinion, it needs to be set up for you to keep you in that fight so that you can win that fight and then be able to move from point A to point B. So at point B, your vehicle, where you carry all your additional supplemental medical gear, the big trauma bag, that's where you keep all that extra stuff at. And that's where you can keep the pediatric stuff. So having an airway kit that has different sized nasopharyngeal and oropharyngeal airways from infancy to small child, to having the face masks in there, those and the neck braces. So there's pediatric sized neck braces. Having those is a good thing to have in a large trauma kit. That way, when you do run across that unfortunate circumstance where there's a small child involved, you can actually treat them instead of having to fucking sit there and stare at them until the ambulance gets there. Now, whether this deputy had any of that stuff, I have no idea. I don't know. But you, the professional, you, the responsible armed citizen, need to be thinking about this stuff. Even if you don't have kids. Who's to say that you couldn't roll up on the scene of a car wreck and there's little kids involved? So if you're going to have trauma kits, you got to think beyond just adults, because there's little kids all around. He mentioned that the guy is a correctional officer. Later on in this news brief, he will talk about how they don't issue them guns. So this was not a department-issued weapon or anything like that. And I don't think that because they don't issue firearms, I don't believe that he probably had any state-level training with firearms. Now, even if he did have access or exposure to a state-level course on firearms training, it doesn't mean it's going to be the best. Unfortunately, just like with street cops, in the street cop world, corrections also does the same thing when it comes to instructors. They usually tend to choose people who work in the office to become instructors. Send them off to instructor school, because it's easier to take a person who works in an office all day, tell them to clear the schedule for the next couple of days, and go conduct firearms training, versus someone who works the street or works the floor. They're not going to take a person who regularly works a pod day in, day out, and then send them off to instructor training so they can start teaching firearms class. Because that would mean that a shift supervisor somewhere is going to have to either move the schedule around and do extra stuff to put somebody in that role to cover their absence, or they themselves are going to have to fucking do that. And not a lot of supervisors are about that. There's a lot of supervisors everywhere in every profession who want to do the bare minimum, and they ain't about wanting to fucking cover somebody's shift and work for them. So it's usually office people in most places that get sent to instructor schools. Does going to an instructor school make someone a great instructor? Hell no, it don't. Hell no. There are people who've gone through multiple instructor schools and they still fucking suck as instructors. They're horrible. So even if he was issued a firearm and went through training, it doesn't mean that he would have received the greatest training there is. But him, at his age, being a lieutenant and working in that field and owning guns, he should have known that keeping the gun, a loaded gun, in the nightstand where a 3-year-old is fully capable of walking to it and opening it and looking in there and grabbing it, should have known that was a bad idea. Just like all the other people that this has happened to. This is not the first time a small child has grabbed a gun out of a nightstand and shot themselves with it. It's a boy. Little boys are fascinated with guns. I don't care what kind of gun it is. It can even be a water gun. If you can fucking handle it and shoot stuff out of it, boys are all about it. They're like, fuck yeah, give me one. And they know where everything's at. They're observant. Just because they're little tiny miniature people doesn't mean that because their brain's so small, they're not as smart. They observe. They see where things are at. They know where things are at. He's probably seen his dad take the gun and put it in the nightstand. He's probably been playing and went in there and opened the nightstand and saw it, but was too afraid to grab it while Dad was there because maybe he knew he'd get in trouble. It does not take that much effort to pull the trigger. I would say that most likely what happened, well, I won't go there because it's hard to say for sure without any other information. They don't provide a whole lot of information, but like I highly doubt the kid just pointed the gun to his head and pulled the trigger. He was probably, handling it. One of his fingers or possibly a thumb got inside the trigger guard and pressed the trigger. Or it's possible, he could have been trying to spin the thing around in his finger like a cowboy, like he's seen in a movie or TV or something. But whatever. This is the kind of stuff that the anti-gun crowd uses against us. This happened. This has happened this year, not too long ago. At time of recording, right now, it is March 9th, 2023. Hasn't even been a full month yet. At some point, the picture of this little boy is going to be used by the anti-gun crowd. And it's going to be used for reasoning to advocate why guns need to be banned. And sadly, there's a bunch of photos of a bunch of little kids out there that this picture of this boy is going to be added to. Because like I said, this is not the first time this has happened. I can't tell you how many times this has happened, but it's happened a lot. It should have never happened. You should know that when little kids get to the point of walking around, that anything within their arm's reach, they're going to be able to grab. All right. We'll play this and I'll talk some more.
So we're looking into how long that safe has been inoperable. What else am I missing here? DCF is clearly involved. There's parental supervision that has to be administered while they were with their other children. There were 3 children in the house. The sister who was watching them was 16. And there's another boy, the brother was 8, and the little guy was 3. The parents had left the house to go food shopping at Publix and left the 16-year-old in charge. And somehow, we don't know exactly how, but the little guy got into the bedroom, got into the drawer, and discharged the firearm once. From what we understand, the pounds per pressure to pull that trigger is about 4.6 pounds of pressure you need to pull the trigger back, whereas my gun, which is a revolver, you need 7 pounds of pressure to pull that off.
He just said his revolver. Like, fucking Andy Griffith. Like, what the fuck are you carrying a revolver for? So yeah, small children are fully physically capable of pulling the trigger back. So this idea that some people may have, oh, they won't have the strength to pull the trigger, that's a wrong assumption. That's a wrong belief. They do have the physical power to pull the trigger back.
This is a picture of the firearm. Yeah, pull that off. This is a picture of the firearm.
I don't like how they don't do a split screen or at least go to a blown up image of that.
To pull that off. This is a picture of the fire.
So a Canik pistol is similar to a Glock, as a striker fired pistol. I don't believe that they have any external safeties on them. If they do have any external safeties on them, then I would say that it's plausible that it would be similar to like the Smith & Wesson M&P lines, where you can choose whether you want the external safety on there or not. I don't know a whole lot about Canik pistols. I do know that they became pretty popular and that they're striker fired, but as far as them having external safeties on them, that's something I'm not very knowledgeable of. Even if it did have an external safety, that's still something that the kid would have had physical power to overcome. They could have very easily pressed down and disengaged the safety. So just having external safety on the gun doesn't make it any safer.
Firearm that was used. There's questions about charging that you're going to get into. We're going to hand you copies of the law. When any minor child is accidentally shot by another family member, no arrest shall be made subject to this subsection prior to 7 days after the shooting. With any respect to any parent or guardian of the deceased minor, the investigating officer shall file all findings and evidence with the state attorney's office with respect to violations of this subsection. The state.
So that's an interesting law. To my knowledge, Kentucky does not have anything like that. I would like to know more about the history of that law and why that came into play. I'm assuming, it's one of those feel-good things where, a parent has experienced a loss in the family. It could have been a sibling that done it. It was an accidental thing, and don't want to further subject them to any more mental anguish or anything like that by arresting them. And that would also have to, and it said accidental shooting, so that's a decision that's going to be made by one person or maybe two persons there at the scene. It's not going to be something that, or may not be something that a whole bunch of people look at and then come to that determination. So there's even some scenarios where that could be somewhat unfair. It could be a scenario where there's not a whole lot of details involved there, and a sibling shot another sibling, and all that sibling has to do is claim as an accident, and then they, it's hard to prove otherwise, so they can't do anything at that moment. Yeah, I don't know about that one. That seems like a weird kind of law that at first, my first impressions of it, I don't see the point in it, and I'm not a big fan of it.
The attorney shall evaluate such evidence and take the appropriate action. Then we have safe storage of firearms, which is section 790.174. And basically it says, shall keep the firearm in a secure locked box or container or in a location which a reasonable person would believe to be secure or shall secure with trigger locks, except if the person is carrying this firearm on his or her body. It is a misdemeanor of...
So safe storage laws are something that I do believe in. And a lot of gun people, when you say safe storage, it's like they automatically default to this thought that all the guns got to be locked up all the time. No, that's not what a safe storage law is. At least from what I envision it and what I've seen it enacted as, which here in Florida, it's kind of on par with what my mindset of it is. But I think many gun people just think that it's like this blanket, every gun's got to be locked all the time kind of mindset. And you'll usually see people in the comment sections of places when they start talking about safe storage laws. Well, I can't get my gun fast enough when the person's breaking in my house, when I got to tell the robber to hold on a second, let me unlock my gun. No, it doesn't mean that every single gun that you have has to always be locked up unless you're actively shooting it. You can have your gun next to you when you're in bed. Have it on your nightstand. You can have it in your dresser drawer. In the room that you're going to be sleeping in. That, to me, is safe storage. It's within arm's reach of you. You're in that room. You control your space. Therefore, you control that gun. but there's a lot of people who are opposed to safe storage. And my take on it is, why are people leaving their guns at home? Why are people leaving their guns in their car? It's because of stupid fucking rules like no guns allowed that is making them leave their guns behind. These people are following the rules. They're following the law. The law says you can't take your gun in XYZ. They're following that rule. So if a rule was made, if you don't have your gun on you or within arm's reach of you, it needs to be locked up. I think the majority of people would follow that rule. Especially if there was, for sure, a penalty that could be attached to it. Now, in this case, there is a law in place, but the penalty, it sounds like they're just going to leave it to, oh, your kid shot themselves. That's your penalty. You got to live with that. So what good is that law? They didn't follow. None of them followed that law. Yes, they did lose a child. I personally think that one of them needs to be charged for it. Make an example. Because otherwise, people aren't going to take it serious. Oh, what's the consequences here? Oh, none. Here's a law that says I could get in trouble, but not getting in trouble for it.
The second degree when it comes to safe storage of firearms. We will, as we do with every case, we will investigate it and we will submit it to the state attorney's office to see where and when, if anything, is going to happen. I cannot imagine there's anything in the law books that can punish that family more than what happened last night. And if you listen to the 911 calls from the parents and from the 16-year-old, you know, my biggest concern out of all of this is the mental and physical health of my deputies and my dispatchers and the evac personnel that responded. You know, the officer, Logan Daniels, the deputy who got there first, she's our first, she graduated in our first academy class. And obviously you could see she's covered in blood. And then the officers, the deputies that responded, and then the 911 call takers and dispatchers that worked through that. So my concern is for their health and welfare. This was not easy.
Sheriff, was the weapon used by the 3-year-old the state corrections officers?
He doesn't have, they don't issue the state folks weapons. You know, clearly, you have to say it, this should never have happened. This should not have happened. We should not be standing here having this conversation. My deputies and dispatchers should not be going through what they're going through. Clearly, for those first responders, this is going to be something that is career-altering and life-altering.
Sheriff, do you guys preliminarily have an idea what may have happened in the house?
What we're assuming is the parents go to Publix, leave the 16-year-old in charge, probably have done it 1,000,001 times. For some reason, and I don't know that reason, I don't know if we'll ever know that reason, the 3-year-old wandered into the bedroom and got into the end table. And when he got into the end table, he picked the gun out and he turned it toward himself and he shot himself point blank range.
Where was he shot?
Did you say, Sheriff, the lockbox didn't work?
The safe is not working. Whether the batteries, we don't know why the safe isn't working or how long it hasn't been working. Obviously, that is a focal point of the investigation as to how long was the safe not work for a year? Has it not worked for 5 days or 3 days or 2 days? Is it a battery issue? Was it, what is it? We don't know that yet. But that's something that we're working closely with the state attorney's office.
Does the officer say he traditionally keeps his weapons in the safe?
Traditionally, the weapons, this is, we're being told the weapons stay in the safe.
So one gun in the nightstand, one in the safe.
One gun in the nightstand, the gun that the little guy grabs, and the other gun was on top of the refrigerator. That was a Glock.
So, the safe that they had was an electronic safe, and something with it failed. Now, I'm not an expert on gun safes, so there's a possibility that there's a gun safe that exists that only has an electronic keypad, and if that fails, you're shit out of luck. I have a safe that has an electronic keypad on it, but it also has a panel or a little piece of cover that I can remove and insert a key into in the event that keypad fails. Whether or not their safe had that same setup, I don't know. But if their safe had only an electronic keypad that could open it, then that's a pretty shitty design. And that is a design that you should avoid if that's something that only exists. You need to have the ability to unlock that safe when electronics fail, especially in the event of something like an EMP burst or a significant solar flare. Batteries going low, I imagine that most manufacturers probably devise some type of chirping noise to let you know that the batteries are going low. That way it's just not like all of a sudden like, oh, this damn thing don't fucking work, just like your smoke detectors. But to have a gun safe that is electronic only is just stupid. So when you get a gun safe and you prefer to have the electronic keypad so you can beep, 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 unlock it really quick, or have a fingerprint reader on there and unlock it really quick, it needs to have the ability to be opened by a key. That way, if that stuff fails, the batteries die, you cut your finger up, or your finger gets chopped off, whatever, you can get in that safe.
In all of your years in law,
The 3-year-old, they have a certain limitation on their reach. The top of the fridge, they can't reach up there. Now, could they climb onto the kitchen counter and stand on that kitchen counter and then access the top of the roof? Possibly, depending on how the kitchen's designed. That's certainly plausible. But what is most likely to happen? Is it most likely that a kid is going to push kitchen chairs around and climb up on top of the kitchen counter and then climb on top of the refrigerator? Or is it more likely that they'll just open a nightstand drawer? It's more likely they're going to open a nightstand drawer. It's at their height. It's something they can easily do. So if you've got little ones in the house and you have not gone out and got a gun safe, then storing it well out of reach is the next best thing to do. But just know and keep in mind, they can climb. They can push a kitchen chair to the kitchen counter, climb up on top of it, get on top of the kitchen counter, open up a cabinet drawer or open up a cabinet, climb up that damn thing. They're little monkeys. Right? We are monkeys with what we fucking descended from. We can climb. Little kids can climb very well. So you can't 100% rely on just height alone being the safest thing as far as storing your gun, because they can climb on top of things to get to that. If, in my mind, if height alone was the only thing that I was going to count on to keep my gun away from my kid, I would make a specialty shelf high up on the wall that is not near anything that they could climb on top of to get closer to. Now, would that look awkward as far as interior decoration? Yeah, it would. It would look very awkward. But that would be the only thing in my head that I could think of, is get a wall that doesn't have a dresser drawer against it or a nightstand against it or anything they can climb up on and get a purchase point, and then select a very high point. I got to stand there and reach all the way up to the top, right? As far as I can reach. That's going to be the safest place, or the best place I can put a shelf and lay a gun on it and feel that with 100% certainty, unless he went out into the damn garage and grabbed the ladder and dragged it through the house, he's not going to get up there to that shelf that's on that wall that doesn't have anything under it that he can climb up on and get. There's not many places in most people's homes that you could do that. There's going to be something they can climb up on or push up them against and trying to get up to it. So, and even then, when you have guests come over, like, there's going to be that one tiny little shelf up against the wall that has a gun on it. Like, that's going to look fucking stupid. And if you have a wife, they're sure as shit not going to let you fucking do this. They're going to bitch and whine and moan about you making this one special shelf that fucks up the home decor just to put your gun on. And then when you leave the house and you go to work and babysitter or daycare watches the little kid, is that gun still going to be sitting on top of that shelf when you're gone? Most likely. So when someone breaks into your house and it's an adult who can reach up there to grab it, what are they going to do? They're going to grab it. So it goes back to buy a fucking safe, you cheap fucks. Buy a safe. Buy a safe, and when you leave home without your gun, put your gun in there. And furthermore, there's no reason why you need to be leaving your fucking home without your gun. Your gun should always be on you. You should always be ready for the fight, no matter where you go. So that tells me that they have 2 guns in the house and they're leaving them behind when they leave. They don't have fighting mindset. If they had a real true fighting mindset, he'd be carrying a damn gun on him. He's probably like all these other fucking people that think if I just buy a gun, it's going to keep me safe. Treating it like it's a fucking talisman. Like it's going to shoo away all the bad people and all the bad things, all the bad spirits. Guns don't work that way.
Have you ever seen an accidental shooting with someone so young?
No. We were all talking about this, the command staff in the room before we came in here to see you, and probably in that room there's had to be 250 years of police experience, and we all said we have never seen anything like this. That's why I said we shouldn't be standing here. We shouldn't be. That family shouldn't feel the way they feel. It's just, it's heartbreaking. You sit there and listen to that 911 call, and the sister who's calling in. I mean, we were all 16 once. Did you watch your siblings while your younger ones, while your parents around to the store? Yeah. Who would have ever in a million years thought that would happen? But, you know, there is a message here to all parents that own guns, and that message is if you have little ones, even if you have teenagers, you got to lock them up, man. You got to lock them up because you just don't know. You know, normally what we see is the teenager steals the gun from their parents or their grandparents, and then they use it in a crime. You know, when you see somebody so young get a hold of that gun, and you know, and I'm not going to sound sexist here when I say this, but boys have a propensity to be fascinated with firearms.
Yeah.
You know, I was a son of a cop, and I was fascinated with my father's guns. Fascinated with them. I knew where they were. I knew how to get at them. I played with them. I knew how to unload them.
Know where they were. Think about when you was a kid and you had guns in the household. Chances are you probably knew where they were, even if you weren't supposed to know where they were. Come Christmas time, many of you probably found the Christmas presents that your parents were hiding before Christmas came around. Especially, you know, the ones, probably quite a few of you probably found out that way that Santa wasn't real because you found the fucking presents hidden somewhere that said to you from Santa. Your kids are a byproduct of you. Duh, right? So if you're a smart person, then chances are your offspring is going to be smart too. Little kids are very curious, very inquisitive, very exploratory. Hell, when I was a kid, I knew where all the guns were in the house. I remember at one point my stepdad forgot where one of his fucking guns was, and I knew where it was. I was like, it's in that drawer, on the second drawer up from the bottom to the left, behind the, or under the sheets. And I can't remember how old I was. I was probably late elementary, maybe middle school, maybe. And he'd forgot where one of his guns was at, and I knew exactly where it was. I knew exactly what it was. Little boys, little kids, they remember this shit. They know where all the guns are. So don't think that you can hide your shit from your kids. They're going to fucking find it.
The war was holstered. So, you know, there's no doubt that he found that and he wanted to play with it.
I know you mentioned the 7-day rule. Are you expecting charges, or is that something you're even advocating for?
Right now, I don't think that's the least of my concern. Right now, my concern is for my deputies, my dispatchers, the evac personnel, and getting the family, because don't forget, you have an 8-year-old, you have a 16-year-old in that house, and even mom and dad. I mean, it's not like they killed this kid. I mean, this was a horrible, horrible act, a horrible act.
Kind of in an indirect way, they did kill him.
Of circumstances. So, like we do with anything else, you know, the state attorney is on board with us, has been on board with us since the minute we notified them. There'll be an investigation which is being done. The state attorney will look at the facts and circumstances and the totality of circumstances, and then they'll make a determination as to are they going to charge.
Sheriff, you say you cannot say much about the family, but is he a state, county corrections?
State, CCI. He's a lieutenant at CCI.
At Timbuktu?
Yes.
Timbuktu State Prison.
Mm-hmm.
Sheriff, you mentioned concern for your deputies who responded in dispatch. What support is available for them?
Yeah, so last night we did our peer groups that will debrief everybody. And we are in the process now of setting up individual interviews. They're actually mandated to be examined by a psychologist or a psychiatrist or psychologist that we have on staff. Not that we have on staff, we contract with them. And then based on that, they'll advise us what the next steps are. Do we put them in a non-patrol function? Do we continue with more counseling? You know, the part that I think people don't understand with first responders is it's not necessarily the first 24 or 48 hours that you worry. It's the long-term effects. Because you may feel, I got this, but as time rolls on, and I can tell you I've been doing this 36 years, that there are 2 homicides that I worked that there are times, and I don't know why, I wake up in the middle of the night and see the victim. One was a 6-year-old and one was a woman who was out jogging, who was brutally raped and murdered. For some reason, I don't know why, all the murder scenes I've been to, those two stick with me, and they wake you up years later in the middle of the night. So,
fucking legit. Like, there's just some shit that, for whatever reason, just stays in your head. Like, I don't know what it is. Like, I remember a couple dead people that I think about. I don't know why the fuck I think about them. But some, like, those images are just things that you can't get rid of. I mean, there could be simple things like just by driving by the certain area, like where you dealt with that dead body at, just driving by there, boom, automatic memory lane right there. And it's just, you just don't get rid of those images. Like, those things will come back from time to time. And like, it would be nice if you could just forget things, like literally just like delete them out of your memory. But that doesn't exist. And sometimes the things that you see, those circumstances, especially when it involves small children, it fucks with you. And it fucks with people different. Some people it doesn't fuck with at all. Or not as intensely. But yeah, it stays with you. And some of the stuff, it just sticks with you. Like, I don't like fishing. And number one, I always thought fishing was kind of boring. But secondly, pulling, like fishing, like pulling fish out, like that smell, like it makes me think back to pulling dead bodies out of the water. And if you fucking ever smelled a dead body that's been underwater for a while, holy shit, that's, ugh. Like catfish. Anytime anybody talks about wanting to go catfishing, I'm like, fuck that. Like, have fun. I'm not going. Yeah.
You said it takes 4.2 pounds of pressure.
4.6 pounds of pressure to pull that trigger. It's not a lot.
It's not a lot. Correct me if I'm wrong. Was there a mandate that pistols had to have a certain amount of pound?
I wouldn't be able to answer that. I don't know. And to be honest with you, I don't think anybody really even knows what this brand is. The CANIK is the brand of the firearm. So, I don't know.
What would you say to other families who might also have a safe at home that's not working right now and maybe have their gun somewhere?
To my knowledge, I don't think that there's any state law that stipulates the amount of damn dog is going off. To my knowledge, there's no state laws or any state that has any laws that stipulate how heavy the trigger needs to be. Now, there may be some agencies that stipulate how heavy the trigger needs to be, like an NYPD. I believe that they have a policy where the trigger has to be a certain style trigger. Let me look that up real quick. NYPD trigger. Well, looks like as of 2021, NYPD to give new recruits guns with lighter trigger pulls. August 2021, they're going to issue easier to fire. Okay, so it looks like maybe NYPD has gone backwards on this. Yeah, so here's something. Goodbye NYPD trigger. Agency shifts from 12-pound trigger pulls. So at one point, up until 2021, NYPD had a rule internally that their triggers had to be 12-pound triggers. And now it looks like, as of 2021, that's not the case anymore. But I don't think there's any states that have any laws in place that says that your trigger pull has to be X amount of pounds.
I would like to, and we're checking the legality of it. I would like them to listen to that 911 call. I would like to listen, have them hear the 16-year-old say, "My brother shot himself, but he's not breathing." And I think if you heard that, you would run out right now and buy a gun safe. Yes.
But there's this, I remember when you guys were at Daytona, you guys handed out trigger locks. So you don't need an expensive safe, per se.
You don't. It's your family's safety. Invest a couple bucks in your family. It's not the police's responsibility. It's not the sheriff's office's responsibility. It's your responsibility. If you're going to store guns in your house and you're going to have kids around, be responsible and get a mechanism that can lock the damn thing up.
Sheriff, I know there's some departments that pass out those trigger locks for free. Is there any here in Volusia County?
We've done it. We've done it. And did it work last night? No. So, again, you want to be a responsible gun owner, don't ask the government, the police, or the sheriff's office to supply these things. You want to own guns, go out and do the right goddamn thing so we don't have to deal with another 3-year-old shooting himself.
I know that there are certain rules that apply when you carry a weapon in a vehicle, Sheriff. Does that same rule apply to a home?
Remember what I talked about. It's incidents like this that the anti-gun crowd is going to use to come after our rights. It's incidents like this where the anti-gun crowd will be able to successfully pass stupid laws that say that all guns should always be locked at all times. You can't even carry a fucking gun on you. It has to always be locked in a box until you need it. Gun owners are their own worst enemy. We, gun owners, are the ones who are supplying the ammo to the anti-gun crowd to fucking shoot us with. The anti-gun crowd doesn't need anybody else except for us to fuck ourselves. And he's exactly right. If you're going to be a responsible owner, get a fucking safe.
Home where you
The law basically says if you're in your home, this is what safe storage of firearms required. Okay? Any person who stores or leaves on a premise under his or her control a loaded firearm and who knows or reasonably should know that a minor is likely to gain access to the firearm without the lawful permission of the minor's parents or the person having charge of the minor or without supervision required by law shall keep the firearm securely locked box or a container in the location which a reasonable person would believe would be secure. This also applies to such as a trigger lock, except when the person is carrying the firearm on his or her body or within such close proximity that they can retrieve it and use it quickly. So we'll give everybody a copy of it. You can read what it says. And it's a misdemeanor of the second degree to violate that subsection.
So that law right there, if the parents were at home in their bed, they would be legal to have that gun in the nightstand. But the minute they left that house to go grocery shopping and left those guns there, that's then against the law. I do, like, it sucks that this little boy died, and it's, you know what, it's possible that they will sell that other gun and get rid of it. It's possible they'll have that kind of knee-jerk reaction. And it's possible that they will never own another gun in their life. But I still think that legal action needs to be taken. One of them needs to be charged and prosecuted. Because until that happens, I just don't think it's like people are going to be thinking that it's a serious enough law. Because you think about it, that's a law that the only way anybody is ever going to know about is if they come into your house. And if you are a person who is not doing anything to draw the attention of the police to be coming into your house, then you have nothing to be worrying about. Like, oh, I won't be caught for this. Like, this guy works in a prison. Did he ever think that the police were ever come in his house and find out that he is not following that safe storage law? No. He had no fear that the police would come in and find out about that, etc., blah, blah, blah. He should have had the fear that his little 3-year-old boy would find the gun. That should have been his first number one fear, and that should have been the thing that guided him in the direction of making the right choice, but it didn't. And so he's negligent, in my opinion. Needs to be held accountable for that. He got his kid killed.
Yes.
I have a question. What do you think about...
If he was driving drunk and his little kid was in the car and he crashed and the little kid died, would they say, oh, we can't arrest him before 7 days? No. His ass would be locked up the fucking day of.
People without training about how to store safely firearms.
I don't think, I don't think you need to be trained. I think that's common sense. If you're going to store a firearm or firearms in your home and you have children, lock them up.
Yeah, but not everybody has common sense.
Right. Right.
So in that
case, there's nothing I can't train you what to do. How many people have firearms in their homes? How many? Everybody has firearms. If you can't you're an anomaly. But people who have them, lock them up. I mean, it's you don't need to be trained. And it's a shame you have to even think that, but you have kids in your house.
But don't you think that this case like this could happen again if a lot of people without training could access to
it happens. I don't know what training is going to do. I can't. That means I have to train you as a parent on how to make sure your kids do their homework, how their kids brush their teeth, how they cross the street. You're a parent. You have guns in your home. Lock them up. That's my training to you. Lock them up.
People take their driver's training and go through driver's instructor school and stuff like that, and we know it's not a good idea to drink and drive, but how many fucking people drink and drive? So he's right. You can't train something into somebody. It's just common sense kind of stuff, which is where penalty laws come into play. Like if you do X, Y, Z, there's going to be a penalty involved with it.
Agree with this bill that is on the table.
Listen, we're not going down that rabbit hole. What I'm here to talk about is we had a 3-year-old who got hold of a firearm and accidentally killed himself. Okay?
Do you agree with this bill? So,
what bill?
The bill that proposed that people without training.
I don't know what you're talking about. I know what you're talking about. Okay, listen, right now we're worried about a 3-year-old, the family, and my deputies. I'm not going to get into the gun debate.
Can you name the model of the gun again?
It's at CANIK 9mm.
But don't a lot of guns like that, Sheriff, have that same powder pressure thing? I mean,
that is a ballistics question for somebody who understands ballistics, and I can't tell you that what it is.
Okay. Guns like that, Sheriff.
9mm.
But don't a lot of guns like that, Sheriff, have that same powder pressure thing? I mean,
that is.
A lot of guns like that, Sheriff, have that same powder pressure thing. I mean,
that is a ballistics question for somebody who understands ballistics, and I can't tell you that what it is. I can't tell you that.
Sheriff, that's a picture of the actual gun.
That is a picture of the actual firearm. I'm not trying to give you a hard way to go. I'm just here stating what's going on.
Sheriff, for those who may not be too familiar with firing guns, how would you equivalent that kind of pressure? Is it just a simple flick. Like
I would tell you it's just very easy squeeze. And obviously and sadly, it was easy enough for a 3-year-old to pull the trigger. So think about, for all of us who have little ones, how much pressure or how strong is a 3-year-old to be able to make that move. And I can't tell you, we don't know this yet. Did this 3-year-old use both thumbs? Did he use one finger? I don't know.
It was loaded, presumably. I mean, with
It was there was a round in the chamber. Clearly, he didn't rack it. I mean, he just picked it up and put it to his face and was probably looking down it. He's 3.
Is that something you'd even be able to determine?
I don't know. I don't know. Our guys are looking into a lot of stuff. There's a lot of things they won't be able to answer, or some things that they can answer. So you guys good? Everybody got a copy of the law? Okay. Thank you.
All right, so that's the end of that briefing video. Like that one person that he kind of dismissed about saying he's not going to go into a gun debate. As I noted earlier, this incident is stuff that the anti-gun crowd is going to use against us. They're going to take it and they're going to add it to the list of other little tiny kids who fucking shot themselves. And when he was talking about the thumb, so to my knowledge, that's how a lot of them, they end up doing it. They're just toying around, they're playing with the gun, and a thumb gets on there, and the thumb, they're gripping it, and the thumb presses down, and boom, goes off right there. But yeah, a complete tragedy. It really is. But a tragedy that could have been avoided. Common fucking sense. And unfortunately, as they noted, a lot of people don't have common sense. Not much else I can say. I've pretty much said everything. At this point, I'd just be beating a dead horse with it. If you do not have a gun safe and you do not carry your gun everywhere all the time, then you're wrong. You might as well just sell your gun, get rid of it, and become an anti-gun person. Because if you're leaving your gun around unattended, easily accessible by anybody, you're creating conditions where people can be hurt and or killed, and creating the conditions where that incident can be used against law-abiding people and restricting and infringing upon their Second Amendment rights. So if you've got guns and you do not have a gun safe, you need to unfuck yourself and fix that problem. Buy a fucking gun safe. You piece of shit. Alright, that's it. If you like what you hear and see, go ahead and give me a like and a share. If you have not already, hit the subscribe button and stay tuned for more Monday quarterback videos. Earl Henderson, Primordial Defense. Thank you for watching.